Agenda today, so we will be moving quickly. I want to give everybody time to have their 10 minutes to present the case and then enough time for the commissioners to deliberate because we have quite a bit of content to go through. So with that, the first item of business today is to review and approve last meeting's minutes and decision letters. We do that in the public forum. So I will allow the commissioners to do that now, and I'll entertain a motion for both when ready. We've had some technical difficulties with our iPads, so we're on the screens today. Do you want to scroll through on the screen if that's not too much trouble? Our minutes and decision letters, or okay, whichever's easiest. My motion made it in there.
I think you told me to make a motion about Dolly Parton too, but
I would make a motion to approve the minutes and decision letters as presented to the commission.
Great, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second, all in favor? Aye. They see none opposed, motion carries. All right, next item is first case on the agenda. I'd like for the applicant for Woodymore Drive to come to the podium. And while they're doing that, I will let Logan read you your rights.
Opening statement to the applicant. If you are not satisfied with a decision made by the Stormwater Management Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the Commission's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied. Case number 1 on the agenda is case 2024-00014, 3137 Woodymore Drive at 3137 Woodymore Drive. APN is 150-060-27900. Inspector is DS Single Family. Council District 29, Tasha Ellis. Applicant's request: disturbance of the Zone 1 and Zone 2 floodway buffer, continuous mowing and maintenance of portions of the buffer, waiver of buffer signage, allowance of engineer to stamp the landscape mitigation plan. Appellant is Ramla Muhammad, represented by Chet Rhodes, Rhodes Engineering. Comments: Stormwater staff. Site bought on June 22nd, 2022 from a tax sale. Effective FEMA map is dated February 25th, 2022. Panel 47037C0403J. Lot is currently open space. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway and or greenway easement and does not want to influence the Stormwater Management Commission's deliberations.
Great. I'll give you a little intro of how the process will work. You will have 10 minutes to present your case. I will not count the introductions for each person that's at the panel against that time. After your 10-minute presentation is done, I will close that session and open it up to public comment. If there's anybody here to speak in favor or oppose, we'll come up to the podium and speak. They'll have 2 minutes to present their case. Then we will close public hearing and we will open it up for the commissioners to deliberate, and we may have some back and forth dialogue to you as we make a judgment on the case. Is that clear? Okay, so with that, I'd like to have you introduce yourselves, and then I'll start the 10-minute clock for the presentation. Do you have any slides or anything that we need to be prepared for? We've got that. Okay, great.
Yes, I'm Chet Rhodes with Rhodes Engineering. Here to present my client.
And if you don't mind, press the red button, sorry, on the mic so it's recorded as well. It's on and off, yep. It's on the base of on the right side. Small button that's, there you go.
There's a blue, there's a red.
Oh, there you go, okay.
All right. Now, I'm Chet Rhodes with Rhodes Engineering and representing my client, Ramla, and her husband, Salad.
Hi, I'm Ramla Mohammed.
I'm Salat Noor.
Okay.
Thanks.
On the board behind you, I have prepared a brief PowerPoint to begin an introduction to our presentation. After I go through some of these points, then I'm going to just allow the drawings that were submitted and presented to staff and that your person over here already has ready to go through the plans. So we have this one slide and then the plans that were submitted as our presentation. First thing I wanted to point out to you, and you saw this on the screen a minute ago when you saw the whole parcel, that this is the only location that's buildable. The location where we want to build on is right between lots 3133 and 3141, right there, that zoom in that area. That's the only buildable area in this entire property, and we've been through this with Metro staff, and we've gotten good help from Logan and Steve Mishu and Joey Hargis and others, but we wanted to acknowledge and appreciate their help on getting our presentation before you today. The other thing I would point out is this was purchased fairly recently from Metro Properties, and there was no mention of any unbuildable nature provided to this property with the sale. I also understand from Metro staff that a precedent does exist that floodway buffer disturbances have been allowed on such acquired properties in the past, so I want you to consider that. But we know that, we're trying to stay out of the floodway buffers. Our design is done to do that and to minimize the request that we have before you today. We don't want to ask for any more than we have to, but as you'll see on the plans, there are some areas where we're requesting permission to disturb the floodway buffers. And I guess we've followed all the Metro staff guidance we've been given and trying to just have one structure on this entire property for a single family or duplex in the future as Metro zoning and planning would allow. And so I would like to walk through the plans on your screen that you have already provided to you. And the owners, if they have any comments, I did want them to make them. Did you want to make any comments?
Yeah, real quick, yeah. Just to add to this, when I first went through the property tax sale was because living in Nashville now is pretty expensive. And the only way to actually go buy something that's reasonable to our price was to go through the property tax sale. And, we found this lot, ideally hoping, we would build something for my brother that has 5 kids and lives in a 2-bedroom right now. So we went through this process, and knowing that it was like 1.8 acres, we were not told that you cannot build on it or it was on a floodway. We bought it as is, and we've been going through this process for almost a year now, and that we've been told by zoning that this is the only place you can build. So we're hoping at least based on...
Your light turned off, and could you please speak into the mic? Pull it towards you, thanks.
Okay. So we were hoping, based on the subdivision there, it was built, Habitat Humanity built around the area, and the 2 houses that my lot is in the middle of is built by Habitat Humanity, and we were hoping to something similar that, eventually they can afford and live in was what we were thinking about, and right now, we're going through this, but ideally it's 1.8 acres, and this is the only space that we can build on based on all that that we have. That's about it. Thank you.
Okay, with that said, I think we'll go through here. On the first page, you do see the FEMA flood map and the location of the property. I think we could go to the next sheet where we're zooming into the site. Okay, here's a close-up view of that. Keep in mind it's 1.8 acres, and we're looking at this little quarter-of-acre area here that we've got zoomed in. We're trying to show the floodplain on there. That floodplain is shown as per Metro staff's number that they gave us for the floodplain. We had 2 or 3 versions of this with the surveyor. A previous version showed a little less impact to that lot from the floodway than this, but this is the final official version. And so I go to the next sheet where we can see what we're proposing on this. Okay, this one's to get you to see the whole nature of the whole property and then that area. So that's just an overall to give you the whole property. But the next sheet, I guess, would be the what we want to do is go to that. Okay, now here is what we are proposing. In this, we proposed a very modest structure. As you can see, less than 1,300 square foot on the footprint. And it does encroach into this floodplain as shown slightly. The survey from Brian Refsnyder did not show it in the floodplain that he determined, but this is based on the being conservative and raising the number of the floodplain to what the staff recommended we do. We do show an encroachment here into that floodway buffer. So wanted you to see that. The buffers are shown on the bold lines with the two dots through the property. Buffer 1 and buffer 2 are labeled there. And so you can see that this house doesn't line up with, it lines up with the neighboring sites to the side, and their houses on either side of this. So to have a house in this area is not unprecedented. This is the only location they have to potentially build a structure. So that's what we're proposing is this one. The minimum floor elevation shown, 550.5, is 4 feet above the 100-year flood elevation. There would be a crawl space with flood vents under this so that in the event that we got the 100-year or greater storm and we got water in the crawl space, it would, as it receded, would quickly go down. So we'd minimize any time that water would be under the structure. But it is designed for that. And, we showed the, I guess our request. Let's go to our specific request now that you've seen this. So you know what we're asking for is that we're asking for the floodplain disturbance, and maybe just part of my presentation. Can I defer to you, Logan, to tell him what we're asking for here at this point? Just so it's clear. I don't want to misstate it. We've been working with the staff and relying on them to tell us what we needed, I guess. So that's why I'm deferring to him to tell you. Is that okay? Okay, we have them listed there so you can see them. The disturbance in the zone 1 and 2.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But yeah, but let's go with what you guys are requesting, Logan's just staff.
Yeah, it's written there. He pulled that up. Thanks for the case summary there and the case description. Continuous mowing and maintenance of a portion of the buffer and a waiver of the buffer signage, and to allow the engineer to stamp the landscape mitigation plan. Normally landscape mitigations by a landscape architect. In this case, being small residential, we wanted just some bushes and other trees around it. So we did provide a mitigation plan with this, and we want permission to be allowed to have that instead of the expense of a landscape architect here. So that's our request, and I appreciate your time. Go back to the drawings. I just want to go through and see if I didn't miss anything that I want to talk about. We'll just go to the next sheet. And
I'll give you have two minutes left.
Okay. Well, I think that's all we need. Go to the next sheet. Okay. And here we're showing the construction entrance drive that would be required for construction of rock. Erosion control measures are put up there and are part of our plan. Silt fencing to keep dirt on the lot during construction. Those typical erosion control things are part of our plan, as you can see. And we'll just continue skimming through the plans here. There's a very detailed set of plans for this structure. And I think we even provided floor plans of it to go in there with it. But that may not be part of your package today. It'll be for later. Is there another sheet, or is that the last one? Okay, one thing I want to point out here while we're on this sheet, if you go back up to the drive, we were asked by the staff at one point to try to move the building as far toward Woodymore as we could. We still have to have two, parking spaces for the structure, so the driveways are needed. And we did discuss this with Joey Hargis, and he sent a letter of agreement that this was as far toward Woodymore as we could reasonably move the structure. So we did have Mr. Hargis send us a letter to that end, and that was submitted in the package. So you could see that we did try to push the building out of the floodway and toward Woodymore as much as possible. And so just consider that. But we do have to have a driveway and a parking for this structure as well. And we would have encroached into the setback if we'd moved it forward, which would have required a variance. So everyone agreed this was the best scenario to present. Thank you, and that's all.
Great, thank you, that's well timed. Okay, I'll kick it off and open up, well, excuse me, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Is anybody here to speak in favor of or against this case? Seeing none. Logan, did we receive any letters? Airmail?
There is a letter of opposition from a gentleman. He does work for Metro, but his comments are not related to Metro. They're just private citizen comments.
Okay.
I also got some calls just from neighbors, but nobody really said in favor or in opposition. It was just informational.
Okay, great. With that, I'll close public comment and open it up to the commissioners. I'll kick it off by asking, was there an existing home on this property in this developed subdivision, or was this more of the outfall for the storm?
Back on. There was not an existing structure on this lot. Part of the process we've been through the last several months, we did create a plat for this, which will be recorded if this is approved today, because you have to have a plat to have a buildable lot. And so there's no home there. The plat of the entire property will be recorded subject to this vote so that a home could be built there.
It's currently open space for the subdivision.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
This was not platted. The lot to the east was 64, the lot to the west was 65. This was part of a greater open space that had a neighborhood amenity element to it. It was never intended to be a buildable lot.
That's correct. Yeah. I believe the original development went belly up or something, and Habitat for Humanity took it over and built the houses out, but they don't have a detention pond or anything on this lot. There's the detention pond for that Parks at Priest Lake subdivision is farther up the road. So this is just an amenity open space, I guess.
Yeah. And this, go ahead.
And I think the question is, was that was that open space calculated in the density for the subdivision approval in the beginning?
Yeah. Do you mind going to parcel viewer and showing the greater parcel? And then there's a button you can click to get to the plat, and you can see that it was not intended to be a lot. And so you've said that you have submitted a plat to planning, and all comments are satisfied pending stormwater approval?
Everyone wants to make sure you are going to allow it first before it will proceed forward, but the survey and the plat's been prepared, and we'll have to go, in Metro, we'll have to record that before a structure could be built on it.
Because ultimately, I think that they're consolidating it with the parcel that was at the end of the cul-de-sac. Where they're splitting it off of that parcel. So it'll be more apparent when you go to parcel viewer.
I mean, I had some conversation with planning, and they said if they want to build, they'll have to replat with all the neighbors' signatures. This was a cluster lot development, which requires a certain amount of open space. So I guess, I don't know how that'll be calculated, if they'll still make them have that same amount of open space, or if it'll just be treated as a separate development.
Well, regardless of that, I mean, that is an issue that I get hung up on, but it's somewhat outside our purview. We have, typically when we've been looking at floodway buffers, it's really, they've never been encompassing the back half of the lot, and we've denied them all. And so this would be contrary to everything we've done over the last several years since I've been on the board.
Go ahead.
I just want to address the issue you're discussing. Understand that we were told by the staff and the zoning that we needed to get zoning's opinion whether this could be built upon, and we have emails from zoning saying, yes, you can. You'll need to do these things in order to do it. We wouldn't have brought this to your attention unless zoning had given us that correspondence that indicated that we could build on it. We would have stopped dead in our tracks there. So you're considering an issue that staff brought to our attention and that we addressed, and we have correspondence with staff on, and we were told we could do it, but it's subject to your all's approval. and that they didn't have a problem with a house being built here. So they've already looked at the open space and the other issues and responded to us in writing. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Understood. I think under their purview, that may be the case, but under stormwater, it's a different set of eyes. And in this case, it's a buffer disturbance issue. Zone 1 is the no disturb buffer, period. And most of your development is within it, if not the Zone 2. This lot was purchased on a tax sale, and with that comes the risk that you're facing now. It's a 1.8 acre site, but there's a reason why the site was platted this way along the stream buffer, and this is somewhat of the risk of being in the development business and not doing the appropriate due diligence. I think it would have been a simple exercise had you had the address, the parcel viewer. Mr. Hunt, if you could turn on the layers for the FEMA floodplain and floodway, I think it would have been a really cheap insurance policy to do this free due diligence here. If you could turn on the FEMA.
No, the buffers are under that tab. If you hit the button to the right.
Right there, FEMA floodplain, yep. This would have been a 1 minute due diligence exercise to see that this lot is at risk. So from a due diligence standpoint, I don't know if I can support this because it would undo all that we've done on this body since it's existed. There's been no new construction within the Zone 1 buffer. And that would not be fair to the applicants who have come before this body where we have denied their ability to build within that buffer. So why should we allow this when, since this body's existed, we've denied it? Please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd take you back to my first point on my PowerPoint slide was that there is precedent for this. This body has approved a disturbance in the floodway buffers prior for a property similar acquired from Metro Properties that was bought without any, information or guarantees from Metro. But I'm understanding that there has been such a case approved before. It's not unprecedented. It is one other case similar to this one that was approved. So it wouldn't be the first, and we know that it's on a case-by-case basis, and you have to do your job, but we want you to consider this as a single case basis, and we've gotten guidance from staff before we brought this to you. We've been working diligently, trying to do due diligence, but I get your point about the floodway, and I think they were told that a lot of it was in the floodplain, that it might be a portion they could use. It was the initial things that consultants and surveyors told them. So I think they tried to do some due diligence, and I've been trying to work with them on that point for some time, and this is the only proposal that we have. It's just one single structure, limited area, far away from the buffers as we could get them to make it work. And we think it's a good and workable and doable project that should be allowed to proceed. So, but I understand the comments and I appreciate them. Thank you.
Does staff have any comment? Mr. Mishu, it's good to see you back in the hot seat.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I will say that there is a letter in the file that has my name on it. I will say that was when I was a codes employee. And that was more geared towards a setback comment and not necessarily a buffer comment.
Great. Thank you for the clarification. Ms. Mohammed, did you have an additional comment? I wanted to make sure that you're heard.
No, I just wanted to add, based on your point, if you look at the map, the house, the reason why, I did this too, and there's houses on both sides on the buffer. So seeing that, I'm like, okay, this is something I can build on. I didn't think there's going to be a post from it, but I just wanted to add that.
Those were built before this was a map floodway. I'm aware of buffer disturbances in Zone 1. I'm not aware of us allowing any structures in the Zone 1 buffer.
Right. Okay. All right, it seems like we're headed towards a motion on this. Is there any other comment?
No.
Okay.
Are you all going to
you're looking at me. Looking at this case, and I understand that the precedents, when I was looking at this as well, have concerns associated with the floodway, and since I have been on this commission, I think the approval of this type of variance would be opposite of what this commission has voted on since I've been here, so I would put forth a motion to deny the variance as it was submitted.
Second.
We have a motion that's been properly seconded. Any discussion? I'll add, if you feel like that there's an issue with Metro and the sale of this land, it was sold as is, but from what this body governs, this is a pretty clear case to us. There's nothing really ambiguous for us to really waver on. I'm sorry about that. So with that, is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none? None abstain? Motion's carries. It's denied. Thank you. Okay. Next case, sorry, Logan, I don't have a printed agenda, is the Belmead Plaza case. If the applicant could come to the mics while Logan introduces the case.
All right. Case number 2 on the agenda is case 2024-00016, Belmead Plaza Final, 4500 Harding Pike. APN is 116-03-000-500. Inspector is NPDES, Council District 20, Roland Horton. Applicant's request: disturbance and encroachment of the floodway and 75-foot floodway buffer of Richland Creek and Sugar Tree Creek, continuous mowing and maintenance of the floodway and 75-foot floodway buffer, use of 2 bioretention areas in the Zone 2 floodway buffer, modification of buffer signage detail to allow for educational signage. Appellant is AJ Capital Partners, represented by Ryan Woodson, Bard Civil Associates. Comments: Stormwater staff. Project was heard as a preliminary variance at March 2024 meeting. Project has worked to minimize all buffer disturbances, adequate mitigation provided, and extensive buffer restoration was pursued. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways has an interest in a greenway and/or greenway easement, and the submittal is approved as is.
Great. I know the applicant has been here before, so I'll spare the introduction and instructions. And with that, I'll allow for their introductions and start the 10-minute clock thereafter.
Good morning, Ryan Woodson, Bard Civil Associates, civil engineer.
Brian Phelps, Hawkins Partners,
Great.
landscape architect.
Thank you.
We had a presentation prepared.
And I've hit pause on the clock, so.
Great. Well, thank you so much for hearing our variance request. As Logan stated, we were here in March for a preliminary plan. So this is our final plan, very similar in nature to what was presented for that preliminary, but some minor changes that we'll go over with you all. Next slide, please. So this is a list of our variance requests. I know Logan read them, so I'm not going to read them again, but there are 4 of those, and we'll go through each one individually. Great. So this is existing site context for you all to see. This is 4500 Harding Pike is the address. It's at the corner of White Bridge Road and Harding Pike. There's an existing Kroger structure kind of in the planned northwest corner of the site and a strip mall. Then there's the CSX Railroad to the north. And then a parking garage, both the Kroger and the parking garage, as you all are aware, built over Sugar Tree and Richland Creeks. Next slide, please. Here's a map showing existing floodway and floodplain on the site. The buffers there in orange and green, as you can see, a good portion of the site, I think roughly 30% is encumbered by floodway and buffer, and then you have all these existing structures that are currently built into those buffers. Here's some photos which we reviewed in March with you all, but just to recap, these are some photos taken underneath both the existing Kroger structure and the parking garage. We've got Sugar Tree which flows into the confluence with Richland Creek. Then Richland Creek continues northeast underneath the Kroger as well as the parking garage. Next slide, please. This is the back of that existing strip mall. There's some parking back here. There's some dumpsters, some grease interceptors, other utilities. There's even a retail space at the bottom floor of this strip mall that was flooded during the 2010 flood. Its finished floor elevation is about 6 or 7 feet below BFE, but all this area is also below the floodplain. Next slide. So our first request, variance request number 1, to disturb and encroach the floodway and floodway buffer, is really to complete the mitigation on the streams, to pull all these structures out, to build a greenway and all the plantings associated with that. Next slide, please. Here's our site plan. As you can see, the buildings are fully out of both the Zone 1 and Zone 2 buffers. We have a greenway that runs in the Zone 2 buffer. And then there's what we're calling Platform Park, which is the existing Kroger structure modified. A good chunk of that structure is removed so that we can daylight the creek, but we're reusing columns so that a public park can be created there so that members of the public can go out and view the creek and interact with it. We're asking for, I guess we'll get into that in the next variance request, but there's also two bioretention areas we're asking for encroachment into the buffer. Next slide, please. So as you can see, these are the highlighted buffer areas and how we are staying out of those with the buildings, but we do have a greenway in one of these buffers. I also want to note, since we saw you all in March, there's one change to our Zone 2 encroachment at the kind of northeast corner of the plan here next to White Bridge. We're asking for encroachment for NES transformers. We've already met with NES and they indicated that they prefer this location. There's an existing service that goes across White Bridge. There's a drop pole and a guy pole on our side of the property that NES currently uses that they would like to refeed the project from. So these transformers would be right up against the building on the edge of that Zone 2 buffer, but they'd be out of the floodplain. They're about 4 feet above. So NES has indicated that that is their preferred in lieu of doing underground vaults. Next slide, please. Here's a proposed grading plan. It shows grading along the creek bank as well as the greenway, how we are building in a natural riparian zone. It'll be heavily planted, which Brian will go over in a second. Next slide, please. So here's a slide that we hope is helpful to see how much area is currently encroaching into the buffers, how much impervious area there is. It's roughly 72% of the entire buffer area is impervious. Next slide, please. And then our final plan, what we're proposing here before this commission today is a reduction of over 78% impervious area, leaving us with less than an acre, actually less than 3/4 of an acre impervious area, which is just the greenway that you can see highlighted there in red. So the next request is 2 bioretention areas in the Zone 2 buffer. You can see those highlighted in blue on this plan here. I know we discussed this during the preliminary meeting. One thing to note is we have other LID measures, that low impact development measures that we were proposing for the site, not just these bioretention areas. We've got another bioretention, pervious pavers, green roof cisterns. So we're trying to kind of use an exhaustive amount of stormwater treatment to keep this within Metro Water's LID Volume 5 requirements. And we are asking for encroachment for these bioretention areas, but they will be elevated, as you can see on your screen, above base flood elevation. And here's a section view to just give you some perspective of how that interacts with the creek, how the greenway is going to be built, and the plantings along the creek and the bio next to it. This is the second bioretention area. And again, we showing the greenway and how the landscaping and final grading interacts with this area.
And then for the variance request number 3, we're asking for the continuous mowing and maintenance. As you can imagine, with all the restoration that we're doing of around 75,000 square feet of planting, that will require a lot of maintenance for that success. So we're asking that we can do that. In addition, we have a 3-foot mow zone that's typical of a greenway that would need regular maintenance. So we're asking for that request. You can go to the next slide. And then for the landscape ordinance, we're exceeding by a lot of the reforestation that's happening within this, that we're exceeding the TDU by 231 units. It's approximately 158 new trees that are over 2 inches and a total of over 2,500 new trees as a part of the reforestation, in addition to the native grasses and other plants. So this just shows you, again, just the kind of the extent of that. And we do have the 2 bioretention that also requires just additional maintenance, just due to the very nature and requirements of Metro Stormwater maintenance agreements. For number 4, because it is such a unique opportunity and we have such great vantage points, we wanted to provide educational opportunities, particularly on Platform Park and others. You can go to the next slide and just showing you various locations at the trailheads. And again, Platform Park and one of the overlooks there, just kind of typical signage that would just interpret various environmental things happening within the site. So that's all we've prepared today. We do have additional information as needed to answer your questions. Thank you.
Great. You have 2 minutes. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Okay. Wonderful. All right, presentation's closed. Open it up for public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of or against in the audience? Seeing none. Logan, have you received any letters, airmail, blimps, as Chair Dodd used to say?
No, we did not. For the preliminary, I think we received some comments from the city of Belmead when they were here, and there was some discussions about blasting, but nothing new.
Okay.
This time.
All right, I'll close public hearing and open it up to the commissioners. I will say that, number one, I think this is a great example of a public-private partnership that's been successfully implemented, at least in concept, and it's good to see that collaboration between parks, greenways, and the private developer. So I applaud that effort and also appreciate the developer coming to us with a preliminary for us to provide comments. And so with that, I asked Logan to go back to our meeting minutes from that preliminary hearing to make sure we have all of our items addressed. Was there anything specifically, Logan, that we need to identify?
I'm showing that we talked about state and federal permits, the Clomer application, which will probably be a little later, the Greenway, and then making sure that they're aware of the long-term maintenance requirements. So I think the state and federal permits, I don't know if that was addressed.
And Logan, if I recall, I watched back some of that preliminary variance last night, and I think there was conversation about performing construction at a time to avoid flood risk as well. And that we wanted to get some confirmation the mitigation proposed would not affect the flood water. And then the detailed long maintenance plan was the other note that I made that you had already mentioned.
Thank you, those are good points.
Yeah, I will, as far as permitting goes, I will say since we saw you all in March, we're under review for individual ARAP with TDEC as well as nationwide. 39 is the number with the Corps of Engineers. So some of those questions about means and methods of construction, how you create a dry situation when you're removing these structures out of the stream, we're going through all that right now with the Corps and TDEC. We also have a grading permit application started with Metro, but we haven't received any comments on that to date.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Outside of the NES transformer encroachment in Zone 2, were there any other changes from the March preliminary variance request that you would like to highlight, or any other changes?
Yeah, could you go back to the site plan? Probably that slide right here is fine. So the overlook there that's noted between the bioretention areas, that got smaller, as well as Platform Park, which is noted kind of on the left side of your screen with a dash box that also decreased in size. So if anything, we've reduced the amount of impervious area that we're asking for in the buffers, but those are the main changes.
Yeah, but I commend y'all for having such a great preliminary package. It was so thorough that this is, the transformers being the only difference with, honestly, the southwest corner of the site you could argue provides additional buffer outside the 75-foot that is larger than what the transformers occupy. So, 75-foot is somewhat arbitrary, and TDEC often averages stream buffers, so I don't have any issue with any of that. Great job.
Thank you.
Want to make a motion to approve as submitted?
I'll second that motion.
We have motion's been seconded. Any other discussion? Great, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next case. What are we doing? 9 o'clock. All right, 45 minutes, 2 cases. Logan, are we at record pace? Next case is, the applicant knows. I'm glad you do. Which case are you? RS Gas Lab. All right. RS Gas Lab. Logan, go ahead and introduce the case, please.
All right. The next case on the agenda is case 2024-00017, RS Gas State Lab, 624 Hart Lane. APN is 06100003900. Inspector is NPDES, Council District 5, Sean Parker. Applicant's request, multiple streams crossings proposed within 1,000 feet, proposed security fencing within stream buffer. Appellant is State of Tennessee, represented by Seth Sparkman, Barge Civil Associates. Comments, Stormwater staff, site has worked to minimize buffer disturbances. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway and or greenway easement and does not want to influence the Stormwater Management Commission's deliberations.
Great, you'll have 10 minutes to present. I won't count the introductions against you. We'll open it up for public hearing, and then we'll close it and open it up for discussion, and we have some back and forth. So is that clear? I'm talking fast today. Okay. All right, with that, I'll let you introduce yourselves, and we'll get going.
Good morning, I'm Seth Sparkman with Barge Civil Associates.
And Will Marth here with Hawkins Partners, Landscape Architects.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, on behalf of the state of Tennessee, we're the applicants and appreciate the opportunity to appear before you this morning. The state intends to build a new public health laboratory on their campus at Hart Lane and RS Gas Boulevard. It's a $176 million project and consists of a 182,000 square foot public health lab. The estimated completion date is October of 26. And just real fast to orientate you, the northeast corner is the service crossing that we'd like to construct, and the west corner is a passenger vehicle employee crossing, and between those two is an above-grade pedestrian crossing, which won't affect the buffers at grade, but does bridge over those buffers. Next slide, please. 2 variances today that we're requesting. Primarily, it's the multiple stream crossings within 1,000 feet. And secondly, a variance to allow proposed security fencing within the stream buffer. Here's the existing conditions of the site. The current laboratory is located on the east side of the campus. The proposed health lab, you can see there near the blue hatching, which represents waters of the state and a wetland. You may also be familiar with the driver service center, testing center. You've probably spent some time there, I have. And with also the TBI, learning training division is to our south. It's about 15 acres, heavily wooded land. Site slopes significantly from the north to the south, and also from the east to the west, from about 6 to 11%. We have several head walls discharging water onto the site, RCPs on the northeast, 15-inch, 18-inch, and a 6x3 culvert from Gas Boulevard. We did have a hydraulic determination done by our environmental consultant, Davy Resource Group, and they concluded that there are 3 streams determined to be waters of the state. Additionally, can we back up just a couple, please? There we go. 3 streams determined to be the waters of the state. You can see those there, as well as the wetland, the larger part right in the middle. The presence of the stream-side salamander, which is a state endangered species, was also discovered on site. So we have plenty of site constraints, or as the architects call them, opportunities, to design this site in a way that we try to minimize the impact. Next slide, please. So this slide shows our existing buffers. The required Metro Water Services buffer is in orange. It's 30 feet from top of bank as we are draining less than 100 acres. There's a T-deck required buffer as well. They have a 35-foot buffer, which is the yellow and the orange combined, as well as a 60-foot average construction buffer, which is shown here in green. Next slide, please. These are some photographs of the site. On the far left, top and bottom are upstream and downstream pictures of the service drive location. In the middle, top and bottom, is utility crossings adjacent to that service drive. On the far right is the upstream and downstream pictures of the above grade pedestrian crossing. And then again, far left, up and down, is upstream and downstream of the employee or vehicular passenger crossings. And on the far right, bottom and top, is an outfall that is in one of the buffers. So our first variance request is for to allow 2 stream crossings within 1,000 feet. Our 2 vehicular crossings are 750 feet apart. And here you can see those. That's a proposed site plan. The service vehicle crossing is at the northeast corner, and the above-grade pedestrian-only crossing in the middle, and the passenger employee vehicle crossing is to the west. The state would like to maintain 2 separate vehicular crossings for operational and safety purposes. The northernmost crossing is primarily reserved for service vehicles and deliveries. Here, tractor trailers, delivery trucks, service vehicles, trash and maintenance will all use this entrance. Because of the proximity to Hart Lane, which is kind of above grade of the site, and to the wetlands to our south, we feel like we've positioned this crossing as far north as possible. The southernmost vehicular crossing is intended to be used by passenger vehicles, including employees and visitors to the lab. We are again constrained by the waters of the state as the 2 tributaries converge just west of this bridge. While it's operationally important for the state to be able to separate the passenger and service vehicles, their primary concern really is having 2 crossings for safety reasons. If for some reason one of the bridges becomes unpassable, emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances would still be able to reach the lab using the secondary crossing. Next slide, please. Our second variance request is for a proposed security fencing within the stream buffer. And we have 2 areas in blue on the far west of the site here shown. One area is 134 linear feet, and the other is 93 linear feet. Because this is a public health lab, security is important to the state of Tennessee. While it's not a completely secure site, they do have sensitive materials that will be delivered to the laboratory. Also, given its somewhat remote location from the rest of the campus, the state employees would feel more comfortable with the perimeter fencing to serve as a deterrent. We also have closed captioned TV security for video surveillance and also security site lighting. Next slide, please. This is our buffer offset exhibit. We are proposing about 1,500 linear feet of retaining walls to help offset some of the disturbances to the stream buffer. We've also designed bioretention over detention to kind of compact and minimize our footprint adjacent to those buffers. The pink-purple color shows the at-grade and above-grade disturbance of the buffers totaling about 9,000 square feet or 0.2 acres. The required Metro Water Services buffer area is about 105,000 square feet, shown there in yellow. And we are proposing the protection and non-disturbance of an additional buffer area in green, totaling about 94,000 square feet, or 2.15 acres, which is about 10-to-1 buffer offset or ratio compared to the disturbed areas. In total, we are proposing about 4.5 acres of riparian buffer, which does not include the tributaries and wetlands shown in blue. Next slide, please. This is our buffer sign location exhibit. We are proposing to locate the typical stream buffer do not disturb signs, which you see here in green, to the edges of the additional buffer that we're proposing, as well as some educational signages in the blue. We don't have the language quite worked out yet or the graphics, but we would like to have something that addresses the importance of riparian buffers and also the streamside salamander on those. In addition to the additional buffer preservation and the signage, our friends at Hawken Partners have designed a robust landscaping and mitigation plan. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Will to go over those.
You have about 2 minutes.
All right, so as previously mentioned, our site's heavily wooded, so one of the primary goals is to minimize the disturbance of the existing landscape while fulfilling the program and site requirements that we've been given by the client. So the areas highlighted in light green on the document represent the wooded sections that are going to be preserved. And by protecting these trees and providing additional tree plantings, we're surpassing all landscape ordinance requirements. And additionally, we're meeting all the through LID and bioretention, permeable pavers, we're meeting all the Metro Stormwater regulations. Next slide, please. This one's our landscape mitigation plan. So for the area between the bridge crossings shown in dark gray there, we're planning on a comprehensive restoration plan. Invasive species within 30 feet of the top of the stream and 25 feet from the top of the wetland will be removed. And these areas will be replanted with a native seed mix specifically designed to thrive in partial and full shade conditions. So this concludes our presentation.
Great. You have another minute in case you want to use it.
I guess just in closing, the state would appreciate your consideration of allowing the 2 vehicular crossings within 750 feet instead of 1,000 feet, and also the installation of some perimeter fencing in a portion of the buffer. It's important for the safety and security of the state of Tennessee Health Lab and its employees. In return, we plan to protect 4.5 acres of riparian buffer, install educational signage, provide landscape mitigation between the crossings. Thank you again for your consideration.
This presentation and open it up for any public comment. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of or against? Seeing none. Logan, we sure have any mail?
No, nothing on this case.
Okay, close public hearing, and I'll open it up to the commissioners. One thing I'll say is I'll commend the design team for taking the challenging site and making it workable programmatically and ecologically. This is certainly a feat, and appreciate the effort. I know that it comes at an expense, and we thank the state for thinking sustainably. So with that, I'll open it up for further discussion. I know we've got, I want to make sure I clarify, we got 2 requests here. One is the 2 crossings within 1,000 feet. I think that you said they're 750 feet from each other, so that's close. And then the second item is the security fencing. Is that right? Was there anything else? That's it there. Okay.
They mentioned educational signage. I don't know if we need to say that there is a variance, given that they, the regs say every 100 feet that will placard.
Well, I think they're also putting up the regular signs as well, so that's why they didn't ask for it necessarily.
I got you.
These are outside of the.
Okay.
It will be in addition to the regular.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question on the mitigation associated with the additional buffer, the 4.5 acres. When we're talking about kind of that protection, are we looking to convert that to a zone 1 or zone 2 buffer? Has there been discussion? When you talk about kind of how we're going to protect that area, what are you proposing?
We're proposing no disturbance.
Just no disturbance?
That's right.
Okay.
And then can you speak to how the fence crossing, or the fence where it crosses the streams will be handled? Do you have a concept of how that would work?
It'll be a 6-foot chain link fence that obviously will not get below the high water mark or beyond the top of the bank.
Is there currently a fence there along this property at Arlington Parkway?
There's not. Okay. It's open.
Honestly, that'll probably keep trash and debris out of the stream.
It could serve as a filter.
Yeah. In state properties, I've worked on a lot of fencing projects. It's very important for security. So this is a uniquely challenging site with topography and the confluence of the streams on the west side. I feel like they separated the drives as far as possible. So I don't know if anybody else has any further discussion. But in the spirit of maintaining momentum, I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
We'll let Trey have that second since he hasn't had one today.
Fair enough.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries. Thank you for the great presentation. All right, next case. If the applicant could come up, it is case number, I'll just say Trevecca Nazarene University. Logan, if you introduce the case, I will need to recuse myself from this case, so I'll step aside.
Case number 4 on the agenda, case 2024-00018, Trevecca Nazarene, preliminary.
No.
359 Murfreesboro Pike.
Sorry, I was talking to him.
And we go three votes is sufficient for a quorum?
Four members present is sufficient for a quorum, majority present, and so he's not going to leave the room. The quorum's not going to be broken. So you would need 3 to move forward with it. But again, this is a preliminary, so it's fine.
And in the event of two yays and one nay is?
Would be, that would be fine.
Okay.
APNs are 106-0100-6600, 106-0100-6700, 6800-69, 7071, 72, 84, 106, and 15200. Inspectors NPDES, Council District 17, Terry Vo. Applicant's request, proposed encapsulation of 75 linear feet of stream, removal of an existing encapsulation, 325 linear feet, and restoration of the buffers, disturbance of the stream buffers. Appellant is Trevecca Nazarene University, represented by Andrew Reed, Thomas and Hutton. Comments, Stormwater staff, preliminary variance with proposed stream encapsulation of 75 linear feet, proposed stream restoration of 325 linear feet. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway or a greenway easement and does not want to influence the Stormwater Management Commission's deliberations.
Well, I know you've heard it before, but we'll have 10 minutes after the introduction, which will clarify that Travis is presenting instead of the applicant.
Good morning, Travis Todd with Thomas and Hutton. I'm, as Jay said, I'm not Andrew Reed. He just had a new baby a few days ago, so that's why I'm here. On behalf of Trevecca Nazarene University, here to present this preliminary variance request to you. If we could, Logan, go to the first slide. I believe there's one right before this. Plans for the presentation that we sent over. I'm looking for it on your list here. Right above it. Yeah, I think that's it right there. So by way of introduction, I'll say we're here kind of testing the waters on this one. Trevecca owns land on Murfreesboro Pike, Nance Lane, and Woodard Avenue that kind of borders the perimeter of the campus. And their goals with a potential project here are to build some market rate housing, some retail, potential hotel, student housing, to help fill some of the needs that they're seeing as a university community for folks coming to the campus, other places for community residents and students to live. And so they're looking at these development opportunities on the border of their campus on Murfreesboro Pike. And so in order to achieve their goals specifically along Murfreesboro Pike, there is a potential encapsulation of a stream here that we're looking at. So if you'll go to the next slide, Michael, thank you. So in the bottom, at the very bottom of this slide, you'll see an area highlighted in red. Just to the west of this, where you see the storm structures coming through there, is Trevecca's main entrance to their campus that you may be familiar with. You'll see that north of the red box, we've got about 1,000 linear feet of box culvert that go underneath the Purity Dairies property across Murfreesboro Pike, eventually outfall into Browns Creek. So essentially the request here for the encapsulation is what you see in that red box. There's 1,000 feet already encapsulated, and we're asking to extend that by another 75 feet to get that, to get the kind of the upstream side of that box culvert to the back of Trevecca's property. The idea there is, as you can see on this slide, this is a concept plan of what's being proposed. Mixed use there along Murfreesboro Pike at the upper left of the slide, hotel in the upper right corner, student housing along Woodard Avenue. You'll see at the top of the screen there, the blue line is the 75-foot encapsulation that we are requesting. So we're essentially extending a 1,000-foot box culvert by another 75 feet to bring that to the back of the parcel. The idea with that is it would allow us continuous urban development along Murfreesboro Pike. We've had several meetings with planning, NDOT, Stormwater related to this concept. It is there's a district policy here for the university. There's also a community center corridor policy here, so it allows for intense development. And planning would like to see kind of that urban condition start to be built up along Murfreesboro Pike. The red lines there in the slide show that if we develop along Murfreesboro Pike and the buffers are instituted, that's the swath of land essentially that would be undevelopable along Murfreesboro Pike. It should be noted in the upper left corner there where those red lines are, there's a Subway restaurant there today, and the box culvert goes underneath that parking lot. So essentially, if we're not able to encapsulate that stream and continue our development across Murfreesboro Pike, that parcel would essentially be a standalone parcel as it is today. Single story retail, that sandwich shop probably would stay, probably wouldn't go anywhere, but Trevecca is working to create kind of a front door to the campus here. And so the idea, and we haven't worked through all of this with stormwater yet though, but if this variance is approved, we would look at some sort of exception to easement to build as we're showing here across the top of that box culvert, or potentially break the building and have a curb cut there for an entrance into the site. But it allows continuous development, building up front, parking behind, and so we're just asking to extend that box culvert by 75 feet. In exchange for that, and stay on this slide for one moment, we're proposing 325 feet of stream restoration, and that's shown in the green hatch on the right side of the drawing here. That area today is concrete bottom, concrete side, kind of a three-sided channel. It's got private vehicular bridges that have been built over it over time. It's got kind of a patio with some propane grills and other things built over it. So it's kind of a mess in that area, as you'll see in just a moment. In between the encapsulation we're requesting and the restoration that we're proposing, the kind of the blue area in between there on the slide, that's a parcel owned by MDHA where the Trevecca Towers are. The stream through there is in great condition, grassy edges. You've got natural vegetation through there. So we're essentially wanting to extend that further up and to the right through the rest of this property. If you'll go to the next slide, Michael. This shows you a few photos of the area to show the current condition where we're proposing the stream restoration. You can continue to go down through there. So as you can see, we've got kind of a three-sided channel here. In the photo on the left, you'll see one of these private vehicular bridges that's been built across it. Continue to go down there. The left photo, you can see kind of the patio that's been built there with grills and just kind of other things. I'm not sure exactly when these structures were built. They've been there a long time, likely without permits. Continue to move down through here. You can see kind of the debris in some of these areas. Trevecca also owns a parcel across Nance Lane to the east that currently has abandoned vehicles and other things there, and that would be part of our restoration area. So these are just more photos of the area we're proposing to restore. And here on this slide, can you zoom out to get the whole slide, Michael? In the upper left corner, you can, I know it's a little bit small at this scale, but you can see the proposed encapsulation being extended there 75 feet. And in the bottom right, you can see the proposed buffer restoration. So zone 1 and zone 2 buffers. 30-foot zone 1, 20-foot zone 2 based on the drainage area. Go to the next slide, please. Again, that's just kind of a zoom in on the encapsulation area. This is a pretty deep channel right here, by the way. I think we're about 20 feet deep at this point where the box culvert is. Next slide. So this is kind of a zoom in of the restoration area. Should be noted that we would need to work through the details of how this restoration would tie back in to the stream on MDHA's property to the west. There's some things to be worked out there, and we're in discussions with them on what that would look like. There are private alleys here and roadways that would be removed as part of, a future development. And then on the right side of the screen, you can see the restoration, there's a gap there that's Nance Lane, and that right side is a small parcel owned by Trevecca that we would incorporate into the restoration and allow people to use that as sort of a pocket park in that area. Go up one more. I think we skipped one. Just a kind of a view here, working with our landscape architecture team. The upper right box explains kind of what the plantings would look like in each zone and how they would be maintained. We definitely want to leave this in really a natural state through here, but you can see the width of the buffers that are being proposed. Now you can go to the next slide, Michael. So this is the concept of what we would look to do. We would size kind of a lower flow, 1 year flow channel for normal events, and continue to go out from there as we ultimately size this. And this is just an image of some precedent imagery of what this area could look like. Again, we want to tie back into the stream that runs through the MDHA property. It looks very similar to this. I don't have any photos of that in this presentation, but this would be the character of what we would propose. I will say that in one of our in our pre-app for this, in an earlier meeting, there was a comment raised by staff of, well, the channel is working for conveying water today. It needs to be cleaned up. Buffers need to be restored. But what would it look like to leave that concrete or stone line channel in place and just come outside of that and do the restoration efforts? We're open to that idea. Ultimately, we wanted to kind of say this is what we think the ultimate mitigation would be and what we're proposing here, but open to suggestions. So ultimately, the approving this preliminary allows Trevecca to move forward with a development plan. They're kind of waiting to see what comes out of this to understand if their vision for Murfreesboro Pike is going to be achievable. If not, they've got to go back to the drawing board and kind of reimagine what could happen there at their front door along Murfreesboro Pike. So that's what we have to present today. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you for the presentation. That's right at about 10 minutes. Is there anybody that would like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, do we have any emails or letters?
No, we didn't get anything. We had a preliminary meeting kind of with multiple departments and also the council member, but we didn't get a in support or against necessarily from her.
Well, we'll open it to any deliberation.
Well, let me ask, is there anyone in support that's here to speak? I think you were asking about opposition, but is there anyone here that's in support? Okay.
Well, thank you. It's my first time to lead a case.
Yeah, if you'll just close the public hearing. I think you did, but now you can close it.
All right, well, we'll close the public hearing and open deliberation.
I'll just make clarification that the actual way it was written on the request is incorrect. It's not 325 linear feet of removal of an existing encapsulation. It's not all encapsulated through there on that portion. Parts are encapsulated and parts are not. So it's more like a restoration of 325 linear feet.
Yeah, but I think it should be noted that, we have to look at it as what's being encapsulated versus what's being mitigated, rather than what value it has to future development or goals of planning. But when you look at the encapsulation and the downstream encapsulation that exists relative to what you're opening back up, and the fact that you're including the parcel on the east side of Nance, I feel like that is something that is pretty compelling as far as the benefit versus what's being sacrificed. So in general, I think the application has merit, and it is just a preliminary. So there are a lot of details to work out, but personally, I wouldn't have a problem with continuing an existing encapsulation, especially because it's less than 10% of the downstream encapsulation.
Let me ask this. One of the things that we have to focus on is the exceptional hardship Can you speak to the exceptional hardship and what Trevecca believes is the need for this particular site?
Sure. I mean, it really falls in line with some of the things I've already mentioned, but, they're working to create housing in this area and options for the residents of the community and the school itself. We've been working with Councilmember Vo on this extensively. She's been in a lot of our meetings with the university, with planning, and kind of supporting us on the way through this. And so ultimately, in order to create, I know what Jay mentioned is, the planning policy are kind of not the first priorities for this body. But essentially, we're looking to kind of create that development frontage, create those amenities for the community and those options. This is the way to do it. There's, without it, the existing conditions would remain in terms of what's happening with water quality in that area would remain unchanged if we don't kind of take this measure. So, it's in terms of a hardship, it's a little bit different on this one than others we've done in the past, but that's really what it boils down to for our client.
From what I'm seeing, though, there is buildable space outside of the buffer without the encapsulation. Is that accurate? You just may not be able to build maybe what their vision is right now, but
sure. Yes, there is buildable area. Again, those existing conditions would remain with kind of the business that exists kind of right at the downstream end of what we're proposing here. There is area to develop along Murfreesboro Pike without this encapsulation. Once the development comes through, when the buffers are applied, that becomes very wide across that frontage. Again, on the back side of the development, when that development occurs, where we're proposing the restoration, we understand buffers will be applied there, but there's kind of not we don't have kind of the same incentive to do the restoration in that area, and wouldn't be required, as I understand it, kind of on the backside. So we're kind of looking at it with Councilmember Vo and the university as an opportunity to not only achieve the development goals, but improve the water quality of the stream as it comes through this part as best as we can. We understand that after what we do, it's going through 1,000 feet of pipe, but we're doing what we can.
And I will say, I think focusing on that mitigation aspect is really crucial on a request like this in light of the encapsulation. Because since I've been on the commission, encapsulations at times, and it obviously depends on the real property that we're working with, but there's something that we pay careful attention to. And I do think mitigation, as you continue on with this process, potentially should be a very key focus.
And we've also wanted, I think that the alternative site plan is somewhat implied. It's leave it as is and leave the existing encapsulation, but we do encourage that to be submitted. It may have been, I didn't get to flip through every slide just yet, but kind of good. It's kind of a odd hardship perspective, because if you just leave it the way it is, it's a net loss to the potential of the stream. And so I'm not really seeing it as increasing development rights. I'm seeing it more as benefiting the water quality in the stream, but having that in the packet is helpful just for
These are the kind of requests that takes a lot of thought associated with the regulations that we follow in our manual and the type of analysis that we have to do, because you don't want to you have an opportunity to potentially improve the water quality. But at the same time, we are called to make sure that there is an exceptional hardship as well. So just more speaking out loud on that one.
anything to add? All right, well, will you remind me, do we make a motion on the preliminaries to summarize the feedback, or?
So we talked about this before, and I think we've done it a couple of different ways. I mean, we're not actually, Logan, what do we do in the last minutes? It's not binding, so it's like the motion is is not really needed, but then we talked about how we've done a motion before in the past.
Yeah, I was looking at the Bellmead Plaza, because they came from, we did a motion for them, so.
Yeah, so that's fine.
And I guess before we do, just some feedback, because I think when people come to us for a preliminary variance, they, like the applicant said, they're testing the waters on kind of where the commission is looking. The request that we received with the application itself, I would need a lot more detail as it relates to the mitigation plan, as it relates to how the encapsulation would take place. So if I were asked to vote on this today for a final, based on what I'm seeing and kind of the manual guidance that I have to go off of, there probably would not be a approval of that, understanding that this is a variance. So, that's the one thing I didn't know if any additional feedback may be helpful for the applicant if they're potentially going to pursue further development here.
Right, and the point of this is really just to give initial feedback, and that, we're not binding him to anything, he's not binding us by providing these plans. The point is to sort of, as one of the commissioners have done, is to sort of show him what you'd be looking for if he comes back, which is why I said motion is usually when we make a motion, we're making a motion to approve or deny something. That's not the case here. He's not asking us to approve or deny something, he's just asking for feedback.
And I will say, we've used these preliminary variance requests in the past, and they have been helpful for a final variance when we're getting kind of into the detailed situation. It does help kind of limit our conversation and analysis, because we're kind of reviewing again what they had already presented, but didn't know if any other commissioners had feedback on this. I will tell you, I struggle with the exceptional hardship aspect of this particular request. And I really think and I can only speak for myself as a commissioner, but I would want to see a very robust mitigation plan. And I would need to kind of sit and think about the case law that we have on exceptional hardship and our previous precedents.
If I may ask a question, robust mitigation, we've proposed the concept here. Obviously, we don't have a planting plan or things like that, but we have described the types of plantings and how those would be maintained. Are there any other specifics that would help when we come back for the final that would help get us there?
What's compelling to me is the linear feet that you're restoring versus what you're encapsulating. So I think that it's so subjective. It's hard for me to individually to provide more feedback than that. I think you did exactly what you introduced and said you're conceptually coming just before you want to go spend all that time. I think it was very, very appropriate for a preliminary application, so we didn't want you to feel discouraged by what you submitted.
Oh, no.
By any means, but just further detail on exactly what's being encapsulated. I would encourage you, when you come back for a final, it's a more developed, complete plan that you intend to construct. So getting the easement encroachment, if you do put a building on it instead of a driveway, things of that nature would probably be expected. Any ARAP permits but I would encourage you to move forward with those applications.
And I want to second what Commissioner Fulmer said. I don't want to discourage people from bringing preliminary variances.
Understood.
I just want to make sure that we're giving the feedback. So if someone were to come back to us, they're not caught off guard.
Sure, it's very helpful. Thank you.
And the net effect of the site is much better after this than before. So I think that would override any hardship also, even though it's got to be addressed.
And unfortunately, Nathan is not here, who might be very helpful on the mitigation aspects on some of the plantings, but yeah.
I guess we can make a motion to memorialize the feedback. But mitigation, identification, alternative site plans.
Right.
Just working with staff. I know that Logan and staff will do a great job guiding you, getting you back in for the final. So.
Aye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, I'll jump back in here, and I want to make a motion for a 10-minute break. Maybe we can get back sooner, but see everybody back here at 9:50, if not sooner. Do I have a second? All right, moved. And the next case on our agenda is, I don't have a printed agenda. The applicant knows it. Adventura School, 490 Metroplex. Thanks for already being here. Logan, I'll let you introduce the case.
All right, the next case on the agenda is case 2024-00019, Adventura School, 490 Metroplex Drive. APN is 134-000-27-000 and 134-000-28300. Inspectors in PDES, Council District 28, David Benton. Applicant's request, disturbance of the Zone 1 and Zone 2 floodway buffers, continuous mowing and maintenance of portions of the floodway buffer, proposed educational buffer signage. Appellant is OP 490 Metroplex Property LLC, represented by Mary McGowan, Kimley Horn. Comment, Stormwater staff, proposed mitigation plan offsets disturbance. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway or a greenway easement and does not want to influence Stormwater Management Commission's deliberations.
Great. Ms. McGowan, are you familiar with the process, or would you like for me to repeat it?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. With that, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I'll start the clock.
Yes, my name is Mary McGowan. I'm with Kimley Horn. I'm the civil engineer for the project. The existing site today is an existing office building with a surface parking lot. There are existing encroachments into the Zone 1 and the Zone 2 buffer. Michael, if you could go to yep, perfect. Thank you. Which you can see highlighted here. So the yellow areas are the existing Zone 1 encroachments, and the bluish purple is the Zone 2. Or sorry, I got that backwards. The bluish purple is Zone 1 encroachments, and the yellow is the Zone 2 encroachments. The Zone 1 encroachments is roughly around 3,500 square feet, and the Zone 2 is roughly 8,700 square feet as it sits today. So the proposed development is taking the existing office building and remodeling it to a school for Adventura School, as a charter school. As part of the school process, the IBC requires that a storm shelter be put in place for a school. The storm shelter needs to be as close to the structure as possible and limit any crossing of any roads for any traffic, and to try not to go outside of the building. So Michael, if you go to the next page. Yep. So this kind of shows the overall layout of the site and where we are proposing that storm shelter. The storm shelter does sit slightly into the Zone 1 buffer, but is within the existing Zone 1 buffer encroachment. The location of the proposed shelter is in order to provide close proximity to the school for whenever there's a tornado. It also provides an enclosed hallway for them to get to the proposed structure, the proposed storm shelter. We looked at pulling it closer to the existing structure as possible. However, there's several pieces of mechanical equipment in between the two buildings that did not make it possible to bring it closer. So with the new layout, we actually have taken a significant amount of impervious cover and reduced it drastically. So we've added a proposed field. It's a school, so it's a great place to have some green areas to play. So that's a huge add to the site of reduction of impervious cover. In addition, we have reduced the Zone 2 encroachment from about 8,700 square feet to about 5,000 square feet. So it's mainly the existing there now. And then we've also kept the existing Zone 1 buffer about the same. The biggest thing that was an impact when we added the shelter was that the fire lane that wrapped the building now needed to turn around. So you can see that it kind of turns around and goes up towards the floodway and then comes back in, and that is based on our discussions with the fire marshal. Other than that, all of the other area of there is to remain untouched except for that fire lane. So we're proposing to mitigate some of the existing Zone 1 buffers that have been impervious before, and so providing some additional planting. In addition, we are also adding some educational signage because it's a great opportunity at a school to provide additional education, especially on our stormwater. In addition to that, there is some existing wooded areas in the highlighted red on the plan that is approximately 10,000 square feet that we are proposing to switch from Zone 2 to Zone 1. So that we can kind of mitigate for some of the encroachments that are there today and existing, and the small add for the fire lane. And that's essentially the gist of the request today.
Okay, great. You've got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close? I think there's some additional slides in your presentation.
There's a lot of information in there, but this really shows what we're actually doing.
Okay.
One thing that I will just add is that we're not touching the floodplain at all. We're actually changing it to impervious. So there's no proposed structures, there's no proposed improvements in the floodplain.
Okay. So
That's it. Thank you.
Great. All right. I'll close the applicant's hearing or the presentation and open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here to speak in favor or against in the audience? Seeing none. Logan, did we receive any memos?
It's not exactly in favor or in opposition, but we did receive a comment from the council member, which I can read into the record.
Please.
He says, Logan, thanks for the information. My general thoughts are these. I would like to afford us as much flexibility as we can due to the fact that this is for education, as long as our cooperative attitude does not create more problems for businesses and neighbors in the area. If the expertise of Stormwater and the commission find that we can give in some areas without creating a hardship on other surrounding businesses and neighbors, I am fine with some concessions. Thanks, Councilman David Benton, District 28.
Okay. All right, with that, I'll close public hearing and open it up for the committee. I will say first, just to open it up, I would like to go to a plan that more clearly shows the fire lane. I'm getting lost in the rainbow.
And actually, while you're doing that, I wanted to ask one quick question on your presentation. I had taken down the note that you said the shelter was going to be in Zone 1, but when I was looking at that, it looked like it was Zone 2. Okay, I just wanted to get clarification on that.
Yes, Zone 2, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Yep. Michael, if you go back to the file you were in and go up a couple of pages to C200, so back down to the bottom. It's still colorful, but maybe it shows it a little bit better. One more. There you go.
Okay, so the fire lane is an extension of the existing parking lot, is that right?
Correct, yes.
And you're removing a portion of that existing lot, or is it remaining, that encroachment into the Zone 1?
So if you toggle maybe back and forth between the previous sheet and this sheet, you can kind of see it a little bit. So you can see where the pavement ends, and then we're removing kind of that arced area that was in Zone 1, and then it also went into it was in Zone 2, but it also went into Zone 1. So you can kind of toggle back and forth and see that change. Oop.
So the right side boy is being removed and the left side boy is being added?
Correct.
So, and to make sure I'm looking at this right, are we removing, let's see.
We're removing some of Zone 1 and adding a little bit back for the fire lane only.
And then encroaching more in Zone 2. Is that like removing some from Zone 1? Well, maybe. Okay.
So the right side they're removing, the left side they're adding, the small one.
Okay,
Yes.
I see it now.
What's also noted on another exhibit is that they're increasing the Zone 1 treatment on the left side.
Correct.
They're basically calling it, they're gonna let Zone 2 grow to Zone 1.
Yep.
Exactly.
Which is why this is completely different from the first application that came in, which was just eliminating zone one. This one up is greatly increasing the overall area of zone one.
Yes, and not increasing anymore. We're moving it around slightly just for the fire lane only.
And can you speak a little bit to like the alternative plans that you all were looking at that it sounds like determination that may not be feasible or would not be preferable in light of safety?
Correct. Yeah, so if you scroll up just a little bit, Michael, so we are down, sorry. We looked at, potentially putting it on the other side of the drive aisle, but that would cause, if there was a storm and the students needed to go to the shelter, it would cause them to have to leave the building and go outside, cross a road to get to it. So it needed to be as close as possible. We were limited with our current driveway locations so we couldn't really move those around. On the other side, where the cursor is right now, is an existing detention pond. And so that would also impact the stormwater significantly. So the location best was in the back. It allowed them to have a direct connection with a hallway that's enclosed that prevents the students from going outside during a storm.
There was mention of converting the parking lot to the left of my screen into a sports field. How much of that was in the buffer? How much pavement?
Yes, I don't have that broken out specifically, but it was, if I'm looking at it, it was probably about 2,000 square feet that was in it with those corners. And so we're changing it all to grass currently.
Is it going to be grass or turf?
Right now it's grass.
Okay. Because I was looking through, is the intent to have grass maintain, or will there be turf? I was looking kind of through some of the procedural history in the emails.
Yes, so for the field and that zone one, we would still want to be able to mow that grass for that field.
Okay.
And what is the surface of the fire lane that's in the hatch? Is that a pervious product?
It's currently just asphalt. If the commission would like for it to be a pervious product, that's something that we can definitely provide as well.
The square hatch is existing, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, the square hatch?
Yeah, the square is existing. It's just the extension that
Correct, yes.
is more new in the dumpsters.
That's right.
Yeah, mill and overlay, flexible payment, so milling and overlaying the existing. The new is that dumpster pad, the 20 by 16.4. And what else is new?
What else is new is that you see that dimension, that's the 20 by 16.4. That's the new.
That's the dumpster pad, right?
That's the fire lane turnaround.
Oh, that's the fire lane turnaround. Oh, got it,
Yep,
got it.
that's right.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
good
dumpster's to the
observation.
left, I see it now.
Yeah, the dumpster is within the existing encroachment area. It's not additional. It is definitely something that can be shifted down to if the commission wishes, so.
And the new is also a portion of the parking spaces that are, we need a laser.
No,
pointer.
those are all existing. That's all existing. We're not adding any additional pavement. We're not touching that area.
Are you removing the blue on the top right? Or that's just existing that's remaining?
This is all proposed to be the final condition. So if you toggle to the page before this. Yep, go back. So if you can zoom in, you can kind of see what we're removing there.
So do you have a calculation of the net reduction in impervious, which you've removed and what's becoming pervious?
I have it for the buffers. I can roughly calculate for everything else as well.
The buffers is fine.
Okay, so we are reducing the zone, so the zone 1 encroachment square footage essentially stays the same. The zone 2 roughly stays the same. Sorry, the zone 1, I'm gonna get this right, I promise. The zone 1 stays the same from square footage. The zone 2 is reduced from 8,700 to 5,000, so it's a 3,700 net, and then we add an additional 10,000 transferring from zone 2 to zone 1.
Okay.
Let me ask if the existing parking lot that's currently in the encroachment of Zone 1 and specifically Zone 1, if that were to be removed, is there still roadway for an emergency vehicle to get through? And I know that's kind of,
No.
no, okay. And those are, what I am looking at, it appears those are parking spots, correct?
They're existing,
Currently.
right.
Yeah, currently existing in Zone 1. So if there were cars parked there.
We could remove those parking spaces, yes.
Okay,
But not the drive out.
Not the
yes.
drive out, yeah, I was more, okay.
Yes, we could remove those parking spaces,
But you're already removing enough asphalt to offset the additional,
correct.
and
Yeah, it's a 3,000 square, right, it's a 3,000 square foot reduction of impervious in the zone 2. Is that what I heard correctly?
3,700.
3,700.
which on a ratio perspective is significantly higher than the small amount they're adding. And then, you know, I tend to look at these as an expansion of buffers. And so converting some zone 2 to zone 1 plus the removal of that large area of parking lot before it drains onto the buffer is a significant improvement. Plus the community benefit of having, you know, additional school and sports field. So
Yeah.
I think that weighs in a lot to, you know, how we perceive mitigation efforts. And
Let me ask, because when I was looking through the procedural history, it looks like the plan is to do grass on the proposed field, and I know that's going into the Zone 2. Would the commission have concerns if that was turf, and would there need to be any sort of, does that make sense? But I guess as it's being presented today, I guess it is going to be a grass field.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm talking through, maybe my concern is not really valid.
I think my only concern might be taken as a dig at Metro Water on how the credit they give you for turf versus grass. Especially.
Will that be recorded in the minutes?
I feel like it should be 80%, not 75, but.
Can you point out the educational
second that.
signage that you're proposing as to where the locations are, and then talk a little bit about the additional plantings?
Yes, if you can go to B1-10, it could keep going, it's towards the back. Yep, right there. And so zoom in just a little bit on those impacts. Scroll down. So the signage is pretty close to where we're proposing some of that restoration. You can see on the right side, some of that is just area that's been mowed before. And so we're basically going to add some additional, some landscaping in order to bring it back to the zone 1. And then then we'll also add some additional signage near the fire lane. And we can probably add several more if you guys see fit. And then we'll add some additional plantings back in where we're taking out the zone 2, right there by the fire lane.
The one thing I would say, we normally see, at this stage for a final variance, more detail as it relates to the plantings in the plan, and I didn't see that here. The one thing I wanted to talk about the educational sign is we always try to be intentional to put them in places where people are going to see them, and I think this is a great opportunity being there at a school, and we know a lot of people are going to use the proposed field as well. So just wanted to have that discussion with the commissioners if we think that there may be better placement for the educational signs.
Is part of this a request on the signage requirement, or is that outside of this?
Yeah, it's on the next slide. Yep.
We're out of slides.
That's the detail.
Yes.
This is the detail.
This is the educational
Sorry,
signage.
this is the signage.
Yeah.
This is a detail that we've used at Metro Parks before. Percy Warner, I think, has this type of detail, so it could change a little bit, depending on what the school wants to do, but.
I think to Commissioner Simpson's point, though, is you asking for them to be positioned in a location where they could be seen.
Yes.
So if you go back to the plan.
For sure. Yeah, we can definitely add some more closer to the playground would probably be a good idea, and closer to the field. I agree.
Yeah, I think the playground and the field would be a great use of the educational signage.
So the limit shown on the field is what you're converting to turf rather than the field limits. I was trying to look at it to see if you're building retaining walls around it to flatten it out, but.
No, currently we're sloping it down to the field. It's not going to be a regulation soccer field or anything. It's for the school at this point.
So there will need to be some sort of, I'm sure it's minor, but there'll be some sort of impervious path to get down there. But
Yeah. Maybe something close to the playground in between, kind of where the playground and proposed field.
yeah, the playground's about 6 feet higher than the field. And so those have to be a way to get an ADA path down there. But that's still greatly offset by the existing impervious that's going to be removed. Anybody have anything else? Is there determination on signage locations?
I was thinking towards the proposed playground, maybe working with staff to find an appropriate location.
Will do.
Okay, working towards a motion. I'm feeling it.
Well, was signage modification on the, yep, I'd take the third bullet point as modification to the signage regulations. They can work with staff.
Yeah.
I'd make a motion to approve the variance as submitted with the condition they work with staff on placement of educational signage.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion that's been seconded. Any other discussion?
And also just for the record, to update on the Metro side, the spelling of the school name, to remove the D.
Aventura. What does that mean?
It is correct on all the plans. There's just a discrepancy.
Oh, that's Spanish for adventure, of course. Duh. All right, we have a motion, we have a second, we have a key punch error to correct, our English to Spanish translation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Great. Good adaptive reuse project. What was the existing building?
It was an office building.
Great. Love to see more of this adaptive reuse versus tear down in our city. So thank you for that effort, Ventura. It's Stormwater. Okay, next case is Shelby Park Bank Stabilization. If the applicant could come to the front, please. I think we've lost our parks representatives, except for Mr. Stovall and a few others. I'm sorry. I didn't see you two others. Logan, if you would introduce the case.
Case number 6 on the agenda is case 2024-00021, Shelby Park Bank Stabilization, 1515 Davidson Street. APN is 094-020-22900. Inspector is MPDES. Council District 6, Clay Cap. Applicant's request, disturbance of the floodway buffer for restabilization of the bank, uncompensated fill in the floodplain and floodway. Appellant is Metro Parks, represented by David Fouth, Collier Engineering. Comments, stormwater staff. Staff work with applicant on a landscape mitigation plan. Fill in the floodplain is needed to ensure proper stabilization. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways, approved.
Do you need me to recap how the process will happen, or do you have an understanding?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, great. I'll let you introduce yourselves, and I'll start the 10-minute clock.
So David was going to be here when the date was the 3rd, but now I'm Nick Tuttle. I'm landscape architect at Collier Engineering.
Mike Weiss, project engineer, Collier Engineering.
Okay, thank you.
There was a PowerPoint presentation that we could open up.
I'll add some stoppage time.
Right there, one up. Thank you. All right, you could go to the second slide. Just familiarize us with where we're at on the project. We're on Davidson Street, directly across from the Naval Building, the entrance in, one of the entrances into Shelby Park along the Cumberland. We're talking about a 500 linear foot section of the bank that has been extremely eroded following the 2010 floods, and pretty much every major storm event seems to make the situation a little bit worse. Next. Some drone shots of just kind of where we're at. I think these were taken in 2022 or 2023. So the conditions are slightly worse than what you're seeing here, but you can kind of start to see where some of the tree placements are there, where just the general condition. If you go to the next one, you can start to see some of the pipes that were further embedded into that, into the hillside that are now fully exposed. Next. One more. This is a picture when we first started really looking at this site from 2016. If you focus on that electrical pole, you can kind of see where those wheel stops are. Those have been moved due to the road sloping more due to further erosion. And with the vegetation coming in, you can see kind of that the hill has, or the bank stabilization has failed more, and that is getting closer and closer to that electrical pole. Again, we've moved Parks has had to move those wheel stops, and then that bank's just continuing to fail and fall into the river. Where this all stems from is a comment from Metro Water Services that we needed to basically either meet the 2004 U.S. Army Corps of Engineer bathymetric data with our proposed elevations, or we could go forward with moving in front of you all for the variance application of uncompensated fill within the floodway. What we're looking at is the information that the Army Corps of Engineers has really is just within the Cumberland River, and we're talking about a 7-foot difference at the point that we're pointing out here, and it goes anywhere up to about 11-foot difference within that small portion where we overlap our design with the information provided. And what we're really trying to do with this uncompensated fill is provide a situation that will make the erosion not happen in the future, and that will be accomplished by providing softer slopes and some other elements that we'll get into in a minute here. Next. The uncompensated fill in the floodway that we're talking about is in a measure of 7,048 cubic yards. One more, please. So this really illustrates kind of what we're proposing. On the top side, closest to the road, we're proposing native plantings, or predominantly native plantings, and we'll talk about that next. And then once you start down the slope to the 4-to-1 on the bank, we're using a stabilization matting with sod over the top to provide some vegetative cover. And we're providing some weighted sediment tubes midway down that part of the slope and at the top of the slope to allow for establishment of that and establishment of the landscaping above. Then I'll let Mike talk a little bit more about the kind of fill material that we're using.
Yeah, we're proposing two different classes of riprap. Kind of the grid paper pattern at the bottom is Class C. It's a larger diameter, weightier rock. It's meant for larger velocities. So you can kind of see it goes a little above the typical water elevation. And then the slanted hatching above is a Class A1. It's a smaller diameter riprap for lesser velocities, especially since hopefully it's a much less occurrence where the water is actually at that location. So the heavier stone is where it's intended to meet that water.
So our first mitigation measure for this is just the native planting. We've been working, you could go to the next one. We've been working with Metro Water Services and Metro Parks and the Friends of Shelby Park to coordinate the plant palette that we've got here. That includes a native seed mix in the understory and understory type smaller trees due to the overhead power lines. And that has led us to a little bit of some back and forth with Metro Parks on exact species to use, and one species is not exactly native, but it is highly adapted and has been approved by review with Metro Parks and the Friends of Shelby Park. The native seed mix that we have is a low-growing grass and wildflower mix. It is all natives, and it has been also reviewed with Metro Parks and the Friends of Shelby Park. That's an example from one of the manufacturers we've been talking to of the seed mix, that kind of general example of what it could look like. The second is the buffer signage. Since we're along the road here, there's not really a stopping point. We're not proposing any educational signage. We're just proposing the standard buffer signage. And we'll provide that at 100-foot spacing starting at each end and then extending along the road there. So just a quick recap, we're proposing for uncompensated fill in the floodway and disturbance in the buffer area. And this is all stemming from the 2010 floods and the erosion that has just gotten worse pretty much every major storm event. And then the additional fill will provide softer slopes and a bench and then some additional stabilization through the planting. And the mitigation measures are the native planting within that buffer area and the installation of the standard buffer signage.
Great, you got about 4 minutes left. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right, I'll close the applicant's presentation, open it up for public hearing, or public comment. Anybody here to speak in favor of or against? Seeing none, Logan, we should have any emails?
No, we did not.
Letters, okay. All right, close public hearing, and I'll open it up for deliberation. I do have one question for this project. This is a navigable stream. Why? How is this a parks project? Why is it not an Army Corps of Engineers project? Why are you here today?
I don't have that answer. I came into this project like a year ago, and it had been going on for at least a year before that. So I'm not sure where the original parks came into the picture versus the Army Corps of Engineers.
That was kind of one of my questions is y'all are being tasked with repairing this section, but I mean, that you're not doing the extents of it. I mean, isn't it a problem for much longer, and it shouldn't be your problem, but isn't it a problem for a much longer extent than what's shown on the plans?
This area is significantly worse than most of the other areas. So if you look on either side of that area that we're at the 500 feet, it's not nearly as bad of a condition as the area that we're talking about. Also, the location of this area directly across from the Naval Building is the other part of the concern.
It's to protect the failure from the building and collapse of the building in essence. And
that and the road.
I would say the road.
Is the 7,000 cubic yards, is that what you're putting in there, or is that above and beyond what the 2004 section was?
That's additional fill beyond that previous data from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
I still have trouble. So why is this not an NDOT? Or why is this not can anybody answer the question of why this is not an Army Corps of Engineers problem? Why is this a tax dollar problem?
Welcome to the party, Mr. Stovall.
Mr. Stovall, would you please?
And while he's coming up, one thing I was going to try to catch at the beginning, I actually live close enough to this proposed variance request that I did want to say for the record, I did receive a Metro notice. That's not going to influence, even though I'm close to this location, won't influence my vote in any way.
Thank you. If you don't mind pressing the button on the right.
I can say that it was a fiscal year 22 CSP project that was given down from the mayor to us. Unfortunately, I don't have any other history of that, of how it came about and how we got tasked to do it, because I wasn't here. I've only been here for a year, but I can find out that information and make sure I get it to all of you.
This is a multi-million-dollar, what's the value of this project?
We're working on the estimate right now, but the last we had, I think, was $2 million, and that was from 22, I believe, and that was rough.
Does staff have any comment on why this is a Metro Parks project?
You know, somebody calls us and says, hey, we need a pre-application meeting. We sit down with them and we go through the same process. I don't know if Logan was provided or anybody else provided any additional information. It's just applicant came to us and said we have to do something that doesn't meet the criteria, and we obliged and brought them here to you guys.
Who's responsible for maintaining the Cumberland Riverbank integrity?
I do not know.
Corps of Engineers.
I would venture that it's the property owners, and there are funding sources out there like NRCS where you can, protect public infrastructure like roadways, and water lines, and sewer lines. But I think with the timing of this, to go through the process to find federal funding would be, I think we'd still be talking about that several years from now. So I don't think the Corps of Engineers is not going to say that they're going to maintain private property up and down the waterways. They're going to leave that to the private property owners. So I think that's why we're here.
Integrity of the channel and navigation.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Parks was here back in 2010 as well for the initial work as well.
I also see this as an outstanding candidate for the Cumberland River Compact Compensatory Mitigation Program, where there's actually impact occurring within our watershed, within Davidson County for for projects such as the airport that put significant dollars into that plan that could probably cover a decent portion of this project. I know that what I'm going after is outside of the purview of this commission. It's related to the funding of this project. I just would like for our purview to also be as stewards of our community and tax-paying citizens that we're smart about the strategies in which we implement these public projects.
Yeah, I think that some of the confusion might be that Davidson Street turns from public to private and is then owned by Shelby Parks. Yeah, immediately west of this. So at first I didn't recognize, I guess they could dedicate right away and make it public, but yeah.
And that's where our compensatory mitigation program is supposed to help our watershed, and especially in cases like this in an urban environment. Have you all contacted Cumberland River Compact or Parks has for a collaboration with them to fund this project?
We have not, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if this were an industrial building half a mile down and the slope was failing, then that property owner would be here to repair it, to restore their property. So I understand Mr. Palco's comment.
Yeah. But I also look at private versus public in a different lens. So in this case, it's a public project in a public waterway, and there's opportunities for this to be handled differently. But I'll put a pin in that conversation, hope it's recorded and it's noted, and that we can make a change moving forward, because we've had this conversation multiple times just this year on ways to improve our collaboration between our nonprofit sector and our public entities. So this could be another prime case, and I hope it becomes an example. So my request would be to contact the Cumberland River Compact as a part of the solution.
Thank you, we will.
And use that $2 million towards parks in our neighborhoods. So, okay. With that being said, let's get back to the task at hand, and that is the items that you have listed. Logan, if you could pull up the list of topics so we can handle them one by one. Variance topics. Okay.
I know there's a drop in the bucket to the Cumberland River, but with any uncompensated fill, we do have to ask, has there been any kind of, flood study or, look at no rise? And
Yeah, we've done a no-rise certification. We provided that, and it showed that there's no rise to the Cumberland.
The other thing I would say on your plan, the riprap that's shown, I mean, I'm afraid that's just going to get washed away in the next major flood event. That goes to my conversation about what the Corps does to stabilize banks with some of their precast large ballasts that they use to restore banks. I don't want this money to go wasted if it cannot be done in a federally funded or compensatory mitigation purpose. That'd be a waste of tax dollars. So can we go back to your plan and let's talk about the way we're stabilizing the bank? And I'm not trying to play engineer here, but that did stand out to me. It'd be helpful maybe if the riprap was contained in Gabion baskets of some sort, right? That can retain the individual boulders.
Honestly, I think it's beyond any of the expertise of this board, and that's kind of goes back to, it's an insurance issue for the designer and for the, agencies that are approving the ARAP. And so if that washes away, then Parks can file a claim against them for an error. And then they'll be subject to the couple $1 million to fix it. So it's not really a waste of taxpayer money. It's their insurance at risk.
Chairman?
Yes.
I feel as if way back when, 2010, I think the soil that was there at the Cumberland River got filled with the voids got filled with, it got saturated with water. And then the drawdown of the voids caused the soil to kind of, erode away. Mm-hmm. I feel that, as Jay said, I think riprap is probably a little bit more, it's definitely better. But I think the answer is probably we need to defer to the geotechnical engineer to make the recommendation on that.
I agree, and I think the point of the conversation is to make it noted in this discussion so that it, we did review that issue. The Class C riprap, remind me what the size, the range of that is?
I believe it's 20 to 40 inches in diameter.
20 to 40?
Yeah.
And the Class 1 is what size?
I believe it's about 10-inch, the average median diameter.
Yeah. Okay. To Mr. Fulmer's point, Commissioner Fulmer's point, yeah, that's your jurisdiction. Okay.
In the past, on applications like this, it's been a very strict compliance with the volume approved. And I don't know where you stand with alternative design or approvals from the Corps or other agencies, but, I'd be hesitant to, to say exactly that amount, and as-builts are going to be very challenging. So I'm not sure if that's something that we would condition in a motion or how to address that, because if they end up putting 7,500 yards,
yeah,
I mean, the reality is you're not going to go back and remove 500. But
is there a way to do a not to exceed amount?
That or it is long, my thought was maybe if we condition it that as long as they're still compliant with the no-rise certification in the event that it's exceeded, and I didn't know, I'm not sure if that's acceptable.
That could be a widely varied amount of material to stay within the no-rise. Typically, it's mentioned how much cubic yardage they're going to be required. If there's not a tolerance that you guys allow, then anything that doesn't meet that tolerance will come back to the committee.
Okay. Is that the dead-on volume that y'all cut, or do we need to have is there a 10% buffer included already, or?
That is the dead on, so it would be good to have an amount of a buffer or some wiggle room there. And so how we can show that, I guess, in a no rise or something like that, we can talk about what that equates to.
Maybe if we can say that if there's an increase less than 10%, then that can be reviewed with staff, and anything in excess of that may need to be brought back.
Where are you with the permitting process on the ARAP and?
This is our last step.
This is the last.
We have all the other permits.
Okay.
They're at the end of the packet, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Is this, the top side, there's a greenway that goes through here. How is that impacted with the mitigation that's shown, or is that outside of that?
The edge of road is protecting that bike lane, which is the greenway.
Okay.
And then we start to slope off with the vegetated area after that. So basically the vegetated area is existing where there used to be parking, I guess, essentially.
So you're removing those parking spaces? I saw that
Yeah, I mean,
the barriers had to be moved up.
they're basically already gone.
Yeah, okay.
And that parking was not needed to serve the naval building. I know that's being restored.
The naval building is being restored as a separate project, and I would assume that we're not involved in that project, but I would assume that they have to meet their own parking requirements, because those street front parking spots were, I don't think, tied directly to the naval building.
Can you go to the plan view? Sorry, Mr. Stovall, go ahead.
I was going to let you know I'm working through with the naval building, with the Friends of Shelby, to make sure we are able to meet that parking. Yes, that parking was needed for the naval building when it was in operation, but unfortunately, because of the erosion, those parking spaces are now gone.
I mean, right, zoning wise, there's no.
Correct.
There's no requirement for parking.
Sure, but
And
the
so it's more
operability
of a
of the
functional
building.
deal, and if
Yeah.
they need more parking functionally, they'll have to do a grading permit, and, I mean, that's all private property. They've got hundreds of acres. They'll have to.
Any parking that we add for the renovation of the naval building will be on the other side of the Davidson Street.
So just to be clear, there's no parking guidelines being referenced in this plan at all. So, no parking requirements.
Yeah, there's no parking.
Right, so you're eliminating all those parking.
Yeah, my only comment was this could have had a great opportunity also to do that mitigation elsewhere in the park, you know, and pick up that parking that is convenient to the building. If you had another, how many acres is Shelby Bottoms Park? 500 acres. You know, do the mitigation elsewhere and save that for parking, for public benefit. I'm just looking at the public benefit pieces of this. That's all my interest is trying to find ways to maximize and optimize Parks' mission. Not that that's our purview, but
the vegetation on the top end there too was also a thought for it to serve a purpose of slowing stormwater coming off of the road and on down into the river a bit. If you just do that all with paving, it's not really slowing anything. So I know it's a seed mix and some trees, so it's not. We initially had some shrubs in there, but it's better than paving for slowing water.
20 cars are pretty heavy at the top of that slope.
It was thought to be as part of the renovation of the slope itself.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other discussion?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I would just add to whomever's making the motion to include a statement in there about working with the Cumberland River Compact for this being an optimal project for their compensatory mitigation program within our watershed. We see too many of those cases go outside of Davidson County, so especially on public projects. Omaha right across the street, right across the river, needs some place to go for their mitigation. This could be an outstanding place, but that's, again, outside of this purview. Okay.
I'll follow up with that, and I'll also make sure I follow up with any of the history of the project of why it was assigned to Parks.
Great.
And make sure the commission gets that.
Thank you, Mr. Stovall.
I think that task is noted, but I'll make a motion to approve as submitted with the condition that the fill amount's not exceeded, by more than 10%. And if so, to work with staff, or if exceeded, to work with staff. If over 10%, then, staff can provide direction if it's necessary to come back to us.
All right, we have a motion. It's been properly seconded. Was there something else?
Just
Okay.
for clarification, you said an increase of 10%. Is there anything if there's a decrease?
No.
Okay.
I just want to make sure. It's a maximum set.
Okay.
Just a point of clarity, so that will be at staff's discretion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm saying that because if it's at 10.1,
All right, we have a motion. It's been properly, was it seconded? Yes, it was. That was a discussion. I'm sorry. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Aye. See any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Yeah. All right, I think we're down to our final case. Logan, is that correct? If that applicant could come up, I don't know which case it is yet. Old Springfield Pike, 8330 Old Springfield Pike. Thank you for waiting. This has been an abnormally long meeting, and appreciate you guys sticking in there with us. And thanks to everybody from Parks who showed up today. We appreciate the representation. Okay, with that, applicant is seated. I'll let Logan introduce the case.
Case number 7 on the agenda is case 2024-00021, 8330 Old Springfield Pike at 8330 Old Springfield Pike. APN is 007-0000-3401. Inspector is DS Single Family. Council District 10, Jennifer Frensley Webb. Applicant's request: allowance of finished floor elevation of home to remain at 3 feet above base flood elevation. Allowance of garage floor elevation to remain at 0.4 feet below base flood elevation. Appellant is Gerald and Melvina Robinson, represented by Van Oldham, Evergreen Site Solutions. Comments: stormwater staff. Existing finished floor is currently 3 feet above BFE, and garage is 0.4 feet below BFE. Codes: no comment provided. Planning: no comment provided. Greenways: no comment provided.
Okay, great. You've been here long enough today. Do you have an understanding of the procedure? Okay, great. All right, with that, I'll let you two introduce yourselves, then I'll start the 10-minute clock.
Just make sure you turn on your mic, please.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. My name is Mr. Gerald Robinson, and me and my wife are the property owners there at 8330 Old Springfield Pike. Sir, me and my wife are both military veterans, and we have 5 children, and we've used all of our life savings to...
It's okay.
Sorry.
Take your time.
We've used all of our life savings to build this house, and our rent funds are just about depleted, and we're on the verge of being homeless. We would appreciate the board's approval of our variation because we don't have the approximate $100,000 to raise the house up to the flood level. And any of your compassion and consideration would be good.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
My name is Van Oldham. I'm owner of Evergreen Site Solutions. I'm a licensed civil engineer, and I'm a journeyman surveyor. Approximately 2 years ago, I think, Mr. Robinson contacted me about doing a boundary survey. And as I was working on trying to get my license, it was a good opportunity to do that. So I did the boundary survey for him. They had purchased the lot prior to the update of the FEMA flood maps. And so they didn't know anything about the flooding or the flood maps at all at that time. So we did the boundary survey. I don't have a presentation because this is more of a story. It is better. It's just nothing to really illustrate here. So we did the boundary survey. Several months went by, and I think they tried to pull a building permit, at which point they found out about the flooding. and they asked me to do a site plan. So I did the site plan for them. Several comments from Logan. We went back and forth about BFE as well as FFE. We ultimately settled on the FFE. That was correct. It got approved, and the site plan was ready to, be constructed. So at that point, they engaged with the contractor to start building the home. And they got to the level of the foundation, and at the point that you're supposed to get an elevation certificate, and the superintendent informed them that they needed to, get an elevation certificate. At which point they called me, but I was in California. My daughter has some special needs, and so we were out there for a year doing some therapy. So I recommended them to a surveyor named Bruce Rainey, who's in Portland, Tennessee. Ms. Melvillina went up to Portland and told him about the issue. He said he'd be happy to do it. It's not a big deal. They do it every day, right? But for whatever reason, the contractor did not schedule that elevation certificate to be shot with Mr. Rainey, and neglected to cease building, I guess is the best way to say it. And they continued to build based off of what I think they thought was a laser level that they had set up, thinking they were pretty close. So this came to my attention, I think with Mr. Gerald or Ms. Melvillina one called me back in about November. And obviously as an engineer, my first concern is, did I make a mistake? I began to look through what I had done. I realized we hadn't made a mistake. I uncovered what the issue was. And so at that point, I tried to start working with the contractor and the Robinsons to try to find a solution that would solve this problem. We're about a foot low if you go by specifically what the maps are. We did have Mr. Rainey come out and do an elevation certificate at that time, and we are about a foot low. However, the story doesn't really stop there. If you'll notice, right across the street from the Robinsons, there's a driveway crossing there, and that's the obstruction that's causing the BFE to essentially shoot out into the Robinsons' property. Is that crossing there? Mr. Rainey, being as experienced as he is, was able to get some elevation shots on the invert of the stream there, as well as the crossing itself. And we worked with Mr. Bowman to get that over to the Corps of Engineers to just see if it would even make any difference. As I'm sure most of you guys know, in the field, it's very specific data is better than what we get from the maps. When we worked with the Corps on a very preliminary 30,000 foot view to see how the maps would change, we found that it did reduce it significantly down to the living quarters itself is down to only 0.27. So we're off by 0.27. The elevation above the finished floor elevation would be about 3.73, where we need to be at obviously at 4. Is essentially the issue. I understand why it is 4. I get that. Even though FEMA requires 1, I understand why Metro requires 4 with the mapping and I guess what you would call conservation in the calculations, which certainly makes a lot of sense. The problem in this case is I think the garage, let me just add one thing. The garage is also kind of a non-issue, even though it seems like it would be a lot worse. It's actually a non-issue in that there's several rows of block in the garage, and we could raise the garage floor fairly easily. The problem is the house, and the house is where we're off. We're off by, as I said, about 0.27 feet is about what we're off. And there's not really any options here. The options, as I've advised the contractor and Mr. Robinson, the options here are we can jack the house up, which would require removing all the brick, disconnecting all the plumbing and electrical, reconnecting it all after a new foundation, and months of delay. And the Robinsons have already been living in an apartment now for a couple of years. And then the other option, of course, would be to potentially, if we could even get permission, I don't know if we could, modify the structure that's across the street for the driveway. If we could possibly widen that, a little bit more, maybe make it a little bit higher, we might be able to affect the BFE a little bit there. But when you start doing those things, then it's a domino. It begins to impact BFEs downstream and upstream and everything else. And so that's not a super great option either. It really, at the end of the day, it really boils down to we have, I think, a significant hardship here that's of no fault of my client, and we don't have a really great technical basis for why that we should be granted this variance. I don't know the day-to-day, hour-to-hour specifics of how we got here, but I do know that the story that I just told you is fairly accurate, or it's accurate to my knowledge. And so that's essentially where we're at.
Okay, great. You have three more minutes if you'd like to use that, and otherwise we'll close the presentation.
I don't really have any other comments other than the fact that over the last couple of years, I've gotten to know the Robinsons really well. And the reason I'm here is because I just feel bad for them. I want to help them if I can. And that's why I'm here.
Appreciate that. Mr. Robinson, do you have anything else to add? You've got about 2.5 minutes.
Sir, just any compassion you can show for me and my family, we pretty much. Sure.
No trouble.
We pretty much put all of our life savings in there, and we don't have the money to have it. They're saying it might be $100,000 so to raise it up, and we just don't have it. And our rent funds are running out. We're pretty close to being homeless with our children. We just would ask for any compassion we can get from the board.
Certainly, we're here to review this and give it its due process. So I assure you'll get the full compassion that we're able to give. So with that, is there anything else that you got about a minute? So if that's it, that's okay. Great. All right. Great presentation. I appreciate the history of this issue and the detail. So with that, I'll close the applicant's presentation and open it up to public comment. Anybody here to speak in favor of or against in the audience? Okay, seeing none. Logan, we have any emails, letters?
No, I did not on this case.
All right, I'll close public hearing and open it up for public comment. I'll start with Mr. Robinson. Thank you for your service. You said that your wife as well was in the military, and which part of the military was that?
I was in the Marines, and my wife was I met her in the Marines, and she was also in the Army.
Oh, wow. All right. You're a Marine. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. With that, I'll open it up to the commission for discussion. The one thing I will ask, though, is the 4-foot criteria. Is that a FEMA requirement or is that a Metro requirement?
I was going to see if Mr. Lindsay would help walk us through.
That'd be great. Yes, I looked at Mr. Michu and I should have looked at Mr. Lindsay.
Familiar enough, because garages are allowed to be lower. They're supposed to be constructed in a manner where if water gets in there, that they're not a loss. Mm-hmm. But that'd be.
The 4-foot freeboard requirement was set in our original floodplain ordinance that was passed in 1979. It's a very conservative level, and it's significantly more conservative and more protective than the level that FEMA had set. So it does afford us an additional level of protection. The garage, that's kind of a sticky issue. That the fact that it's a little bit below base flood elevation. Logan, we were looking at some guidance that, and I don't have.
Yeah, we were discussing how it would affect any kind of community rating system requirements. I feel like it still would meet the requirements of the community rating system, just looking at their chart here.
By using the flood vents
If
around
you had
the
flood
structure.
vents in the garage, which is the plan. anyway.
Allows you a higher level of protection than.
Metro requires garages to be 1 foot above. I don't know that FEMA has a requirement if they're vented.
You said the bottom few courses are block and they're not sheetrock or?
That's correct. When it comes to the garage, we have a lot of flexibility.
You could also float it up a little bit if we needed to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's the home itself that we are really up against the wall.
With a couple of courses of block, there's room to install flood vents.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is the contractor taking responsibility on fixing the garage?
I wouldn't want to comment on that as to like who's going to take responsibility or not, but I do feel like that we're moving in that direction. It's kind of outside of my, I haven't had conversations about who's going to be responsible or not.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned with the garage as I am with the house. And I think the house is
yes, sir.
Pretty. I mean, you're at 3.73. Yeah.
Yeah. The 500 years at 539.8 as well. So that's about. They'll still be above the 500.
Yeah. Okay.
FEMA only requires flood insurance at 1 foot?
1 foot.
Yeah.
Okay, so this isn't going to put a perpetuity
No.
burden on this.
And this has been one of the most perplexing issues we've dealt with. I mean, Mr. Robinson and his family and his wife have lived in an apartment all this time because this house is just sitting. There was no easy, quick solution to come back after the fact and say, well, let's just jack the house up by a foot. Well, it's another $100,000 to strip the brick off and jack the house up by a foot. The first time I stood in the front yard and looked at it, it made you want to throw up.
Yeah.
So,
I'd be inclined
brand new
to.
house, totally complete, essentially ready to move into, and we're just mired on this issue of 2.5 inch difference in a constructed level. And I think why you won't say anything about it, my understanding is that the contractor has just kind of walked on this and said these.
Not completely. They are here.
Oh, they're here?
Actually. Yeah,
Okay.
they are here. And I think they did, everybody wants to, they just want to finish the house. And the Robinsons want them to finish the house. I think that, the goal here is to try and do that in a way that doesn't bankrupt the Robinsons in the process.
Yeah. I'd be in support of this case. So.
I think it should be noted that if this were a spec house, it might be a bit different scenario. Every situation is unique. We don't really take into account financial hardships, but I see other hardships, just emotional damage. So every case is unique, and this is in no way a precedent. But I'm with you in this case.
I think we're working towards a motion.
It does stay above the 500-year flood.
And above FEMA's regulations.
Yep.
Metro itself just has a far above and beyond.
And Metro's not assuming any liability by giving this variance.
No.
And they won't have any issue getting insurance on the property or mortgage payments or anything.
I don't think so. I don't believe so. No, sir.
I believe the insurance process will come through maybe the lowest adjacent grades, and that will help dictate whether there's insurance requirements through the lender or not.
Okay. Working towards a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion that is approved by Commissioner Fulmer, seconded by Mr. Lewis. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Chairman?
Yes,
I know
sorry.
you have a motion. Can I ask a clarification question?
Yes.
Is this for the structure only with the condition that the garage is going to be upgraded, or the condition that the garage is going to stay where it's at? Just need clarification for us at the staff level.
The garage stays where, go ahead, you made the motion.
In my opinion and my thought, I did not clarify intentionally. I'm hoping that the contractor will raise that garage and will fix the issue. I don't think that, what I want to avoid is us requiring it be raised and the contractor not taking responsibility and that putting a burden on the homeowner.
Okay, thank you, sir. I just want to ensure that when Logan writes
I absolutely would like for it to be addressed for his sake. I just didn't want us to have an unintended consequence of including that.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for a great
very much.
presentation and care. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Mr. Robinson, good luck with your move-in.
Thank you.
Invite us to the party. We'll bring our own beer. All right. All right, everybody. That is the end of our caseload today. Do we have any other business, Logan?
No, we'll be at Midtown Hills Police Precinct next month, August the 1st, on a Thursday. We'll start at 8:30.
8:30, yeah?
Yeah.
Great.
So
That's right.
8:30 instead of 8:15, Midtown Hills.
Okay.
I'll send out a.
And then at some point, I'd love to get on legal's calendar. I would either you or Mr. Tom Cross. I know that they've been working on the compensatory mitigation stuff, or at least last time I ran into him at the soccer game, he was mentioning that. So there may be an update related to some of those pieces. I'd love to.
I'm sorry, what? This mitigation for what?
He was working on something related to the compensatory mitigation program and how its relationship exists between Metro entities. There was some, I think the last time we talked about that, the heartache around the perpetual easements and some of those pieces. So it'd be nice to have an update from legal, where that stands. I know Commissioner Simpson and I were talking about the update to the regs. We had reviewed that, I think last meeting, at least a preliminary.
Yeah, I believe it was last meeting.
Yeah. So maybe a follow-up to where that stands.
Yeah, I'm supposed to meet with Michael and Rebecca next week to kind of prepare a draft. We might be able to do that at the August meeting, but we might push it to September.
Okay.
Just depend on the caseload for August.
For the August meeting, if we have time, I would like to have further discussion. We've had a lot of cases, and again, I think I've even communicated that as a commissioner with some of the exceptional hardship requirements, and at least my understanding and reviewing of the precision case and how that has been interpreted, that it may be worth looking at our manual to see if there were like additional other factors or options in certain situations that would give the commission some additional flexibility. So that is one thing I would like to discuss, just having a open discussion about that in light of us looking at our manual. And I think it would be appropriate if we could do that in the August meeting and then maybe look at a final draft thereafter.
Agreed. I know that you've got a caseload that's stacking up for August as well, so we'll have to, how many cases are we up to potentially?
It's got like 6 right now, so.
Okay.
Yeah, busy times.
Well, we'll see what we can do. All I can do is make the request, but just something that eventually I would like to discuss.
Yep. Okay. Any other business?
I just want to thank you guys for taking time out of your day. And this is probably one of the biggest caseload that we've had since our last permissible buffer disturbance table that got approved.
Wow.
There's a lot of work that's happening between Michael, Rebecca, and Logan behind the scenes, making sure the package is the best available for you guys to breeze through them. So just wanted to throw that out, that there's a lot of people working behind the scenes trying to get these things ready for you. I know there's an open spot as far as one of the members, commission members. We are still working hard at it. Believe me, we're trying everything we can. Hopefully we'll be able to have some news for you sometime in the near future.
Great. We certainly appreciate the effort the staff is doing and the representation at the meetings. It's helpful. Tom, thanks for being here today. And Steve, it's good to have you back in the hot seat. So looking forward to more. All right. With that, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. All right. All in favor? Aye. Good meeting, everybody. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.